The changes you are experiencing in midlife are not a signal that something is wrong, but a signal that your brain is adapting to a new season in life. We have today, of course, Victoria, who is founder of My Recreo Health, who is a specialist on the midlife brain. She's going to guide us through this conversation. And of course, we have Sallie Wagner, the founder of the Personal Alchemy, and also a specialist in transformation and in embracing your shadows. So thank you, ladies.
So happy to be here.
Yes, I cannot get started because you know what? Midlife, especially for women, midlife happens to, of course, coincide with menopause. So often it gets confused as to what's going on with brain fog and hormones and, even personality change, right? What's going on with the midlife brain, Victoria?
Yeah, so great question. And I also love how you said midlife coincides with perimenopause and menopause, because we also need to recognize that there is a lot going on in our midlife for women, where you might be part of the sandwich generation, you might be caregiving and have kids, you're working at the same time, but you might be at that age where you're too young to retire, but you're really stressed out and overwhelmed from your job, but you can't make that change. So there's a lot going on there. And there's a lot going on in our brain, right? When we start to lose estrogen, when our estrogen starts to lower, when our progesterone starts to lower, actually our testosterone starts to increase slightly. That's why we get hairs on our chin, right? But what's happening is estrogen is a neurometabolite for our brain. It's an energy source for our brain. And when our estrogen starts to deplete, well, not deplete, I shouldn't say that. It lowers. We will always have estrogen. Our brain needs to reform itself.
Yeah.
And it needs to find other sources of energy. And this is why we have brain fog, or walking into a room and walking out and walking back in and trying to remember why you walked into the room, or where are my keys, or
going to the grocery store, coming back with everything
going to the grocery
you went
store.
there for, right?
That's right. Coming back with everything that you, needed, everything except for what you needed. Can't remember actors' names, can't remember your own phone number, right? What's happening is your brain is trying to figure out where to get other energy sources from, essentially. And when it has less energy, your brain has to start going, okay, I need to prioritize how I use my energy, because I'm realizing I have less energy into my brain. So the brain goes, okay, well, remembering a phone number isn't important. Remembering,
oh, I love that,
isn't important. But the best part about that is that you start to prioritize what is important. So there's this kind of thing that happens to women in their 40s, right? Where we stop caring about things that are important.
It's not that we stop caring. I think we just reprioritize.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually the shadow comes out at least in my experience, the shadow, Sallie, it was like all of a sudden, because your hormones have changed, and it's not that you don't care, but you kind of don't care anymore, right? Not from an emotion, but actual physiological and biological. You just don't care, so you become a bit more assertive.
Yes.
So a lot of things that you parked in your shadow, all of the sudden are, sure, why not, right? Like all of a sudden that courage comes through. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think so, because there are a lot of changes in our lives, and you do kind of reach the point. And as you were saying, it's not that you don't care; it's just that you're going to respond in a different way, right?
Yeah, they did. I was at an event and I sat near a gentleman from. Was it a gentleman or a lady? It was a lady from the BDC, from the Business Development Bank. And they have all kinds of funding for entrepreneurs under 40, and they just cannot give the money away, because it seems that at least in Canada, the entrepreneurial bug seems to hit 40 plus.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with that hormonal change, that maybe you're a little bit more tolerant to risk. Maybe you're, seeing it as, is my time now. And, all of a sudden is women in their late 40s and 50s that are starting their own businesses, which is a little bit counterintuitive when you think about it.
Well, and it's all, you said, a little bit more risk tolerant. I think it's also a little bit more BS intolerant.
Yeah.
you reach the point where it's like, yeah, it's not worth it for me to put up with this anymore. I'm going to do my own thing and just connect with what's important to me. And all these changes that are going on in our brains, it's, physiological changes, it's emotional changes. I think all of that facilitates it.
So the midlife brain is almost a gift, if we think about it, really.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing that happens, as well as that the lack of estrogen kind of triggers for us. It's called neural pruning. And so when we start to go, okay, I don't care about this, I do care about that, right? Or like the intolerance of stress and overwhelm, or intolerance of BS, right? Mm-hmm. Our brain is actually, every thought we have, every single thought you have is connected to an actual physical neuron in your brain, right? Everything, every movement you do, every thought you have, every emotional pathway that you have, it's not woo-woo, it's not fake, it's biology. It's your neurons are firing and wiring inside your brain. Mm-hmm. And so when we get to this point where our brain goes, okay, I had this much energy and now I only have this much energy available, it starts something called neural pruning, where it starts to prune the neural pathways that it thinks aren't important. And this is what you need to remember at this time of your life is it might do some really good things in terms of in terms of what it neural prunes, but you also need to remember this is the best time in your life to do work during this transition, to do work on yourself, on your emotional health, your social health, your boundaries, your needs, your wants. Because the brain, if you don't tell it what you want, it doesn't do what's best for you. It does what's most familiar. It doesn't believe the truth. It believes what is most familiar. And what you tell yourself the most, the brain will believe is the truth. So actually in your 40s is probably 40s, 50s, 60s, is probably one of the best times to empower yourself to make these really great changes, because your physiology will make the changes with you so that you can be more emotionally healthy, physically healthy, socially healthy, intellectually healthy. It's really great stuff.
Or it goes back to factory settings, which is to keep you safe.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
It's we need to change the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I think that's exactly what you were saying. We have a lot of false limiting beliefs that got programmed into us. And as we start the pruning process, we're able to recognize those and release them because we know it no longer serves us.
Yeah. And you know what I love about us? We're not that far apart age-wise, but we're like in 3 different decades, right? And it's affecting us the same. Like it's not an age thing. I think it's a milestone. It's that midlife point, right? It's not whether you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, is the change begins in the 40s and 50s. So I love what you just said, Victoria, that you don't remember that phone number. It's okay.
That's right.
Like, don't over dramatize it or, panic over it. Right. I was listening to Amazon Music, plugs, our podcast is there. And I was listening to it, and all these like songs from, the 80s or whatever kept coming up. And I was shocked how many lyrics I remembered.
That's right.
Songs that I haven't heard in ages.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, okay, I remember that, but I don't remember, something perhaps a little bit more important that I ought to have remembered.
There's a physiological explanation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we as women are really lucky that we have a lot of different times in our life for transition, right? We've got puberty, and then we've got perimenopause and menopause. And I think it's a gift. What happens in childhood, adolescence, puberty, all the way up until about age 25, when our brain is fully developed, is something called an excess of myelination. And the myelin is a protein that wraps around our nerves to protect it and to cement them in. And during that time period up until 25, our brain is creating more myelin around our nerves. So all of the things that we learned up until age 25 are actually stronger neural pathways than what we learn after. It doesn't mean that we can't strengthen our neural pathways now, but there's a reason, because that's when we're developing who we are, our autonomy, our sense of self, our brain plasticity, our physical movement, all of these things. And so there's a reason when, as we age, we remember things from our 20s and our teenagehood, because literally those nerves, those neural pathways are stronger.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that, Sallie?
Yes. And think of children, I always say they're little sponges. They soak up everything, right? And it's because their brains have such incredible plasticity. And Victoria is absolutely correct. As we age, we lose some of that. And yet there are still ways where we can reintroduce the opportunities to increase our plasticity, which is helpful for brain health, mental health. It's helpful for everything, right? And so that's one of the exciting things that we can do as we age. We can still develop and maintain plasticity.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? That's a big myth. I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard it. We used to be taught, when I did my anatomy and physiology degree over 25 years ago, right? There was this whole thing about how the brain's only plastic up until the age of 12. Mm-hmm. And then you can't grow brain cells after that. Yeah. But we now know that that's not true. The hippocampus births 700 new brain cells a day in your brain. Yeah. But you have to nurture those brain cells or else they will die.
Yeah.
Nurture the connections as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right.
Wow.
And those are like novelty, right? I was listening to a podcast recently, and we're applying it with my husband and his recovery. The opportunity for failure, constructive failure, that is fabulous feedback to the brain, and it opens the door to plasticity. Which is an amazing gift, right? So we can learn new skills, and as we practice, we're going to suck, right? and for those of us who are perfectionists, we hate that, and yet we have to give ourselves the grace to be bad at something long enough to be good, because the failure is such an important part of the process.
And that's where that familiar comes in. The brain will only do what's familiar. If you go sit down at the piano, you always play the song the best first, right? Yeah. But this is what I tell a lot of my clients, and when I'm speaking, is don't practice what you're good at, practice what you're bad at.
Yes.
And we often only practice what we're good at, because that's the brain trying to be safe and do what's familiar.
And it's efficient, right?
Our brain more fun too.
Well, and when you talked about the energy in our brains, and we start to prioritize, it takes more energy to do something new.
That's right.
It's very energy efficient to do the familiar, I'm on autopilot, right? And I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. It requires more conscious process to do something new. So it uses more energy.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, what are some practical strategies to optimize brain function through, for example, nutrition, sleep, movement, nervous system regulation, mindset, and one of my favorite, lifelong learning?
Yeah.
Now, when you speak of energy, right, energy is one of the battles that are most noticeable, especially as we come close to midlife. Is the energy of the body the same as the energy to the brain? Or is it a different kind of energy that we're speaking about?
Well, do you want to answer that, Sallie, or do you want me to?
You go
I want to hear both. I want to hear both.
So I'll give you a great example. All energy, our body physiologically speaking, it breaks everything down, whether it's fat or protein or whatever it is, down into energy called ATP, right? And that's the building blocks of energy. And that's for all of our organs, all of our body, including our brain. As a matter of fact, your brain is the organ in your body that burns the most calories. So your brain burns more calories than your liver or your kidney or your heart. So it actually requires a lot of energy. So I can give you an example of an energy. Have you ever heard of creatine? It's something that our body produces that gives energy to our muscles and helps our muscles to heal. And there's been some really great studies done in the past 10 years on creatine, particularly for females and the female brain. And what they've discovered is that creatine is actually a source of energy for our brains. Now, here's the issue. Our muscles will use it first, and women aren't great producers of creatine versus men will produce more because they have more testosterone. Okay. So a creatine supplement is a great thing to take because the creatine you're naturally producing in your body is going to go to your muscles, but the creatine supplement that you take is going to go right to your brain. It's going to give your brain that energy that it's losing from the lack of estrogen. Yeah. So but again, always talk to your doctor and make sure it doesn't counteract with anything. But creatine, there's been some really fantastic studies, recent studies done on women around creatine as another energy source to decrease brain fog and increase energy and decrease fatigue. So that's a really great one.
Yeah, anecdotally, I will affirm that. I use it. My husband uses it when you reach a certain threshold, and yeah, the evidence is that it does nourish your brain, and we can see differences in how we feel, how we function. And there are all kinds of things. I mean, down to the basic energetic level of our mitochondria. And so, we're looking at mitochondrial support and the building blocks for that, because if you boost your mitochondria and you don't provide the fuel, it's like, a high performance car and you have low grade fuel. So you want to be really careful about how you do those kinds of things.
So how do we boost our mitochondria?
So we're exploring peptides, and that some people think that's controversial. Peptides are just amino acid chains, and they're the building blocks of proteins. So there are some that will help mitochondrial function because they're the powerhouses of our cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the peptide stuff's really interesting. The peptide studies that are going on now, the creatine studies that are going on. It's actually a really awesome time, again, because there is so much push right now to actually be doing studies on the female body, and particularly the female body in real life. For a very long time, we only used male rats for research because the bias was that a female rat, because of their hormones, would skew research studies for things like medication and these sorts of things. And now we're starting to use female rats, right? So, and it's a great time. I hope people are listening to this feeling empowered, because it's so easy to judge ourselves, to hate this transition in life, to think, am I going to be like this forever? I have no control over myself. I'm helpless, right? And this is such an awesome time right now in terms of what we're learning about health for the female brain, the female body, especially in midlife. It's exciting. Get excited. Yeah. Get excited, everyone, because there's awesome answers happening and coming.
I was just going to ask you, so the three of us understand the midlife brain for women, firsthand testimony. Is it different, the midlife brain for women, than the midlife brain for men?
Yeah, because of the lack of estrogen, right? Our bodies use hormones different. Like we have a different balance of hormones. We have progesterone, we have estrogen. Now men have estrogen as well. We have testosterone in our body as well. So yes, the how our brain starts to function does function differently based on that lack of estrogen. However, I think it's awesome. I think that I call it knowledge of knowledge. once you learn something about yourself and how your body works and how your brain works, you can't unlearn it.
Yeah.
And then you start to make changes in your life around that new knowledge that you've learned. And it's a really, really empowering time for us. And it's a chance that we get to transition into, I call them our active later years, because I think midlife is from 40 to 85 or 90, right? Midlife is when you're active. End of life is when you stop being active, when you really slow down, right? So we actually have a better opportunity to be healthier during our midlife in terms of how our brain works and what's going on with our body than men. But we need to take the science that we're learning and really jump on it and empower ourselves, because it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you've been in this incredible journey with Matthias, Sallie.
Mm-hmm.
Which would have been an incredible journey anyways, but now it's more intentional.
Sure.
Right? What are some areas that have surprised you of how different the male brain is to the female brain?
Yeah. So as he becomes more engaged, and for Victoria and others who don't know, he experienced a catastrophic brain aneurysm 3 years ago. And since last September, he's made remarkable progress because of a procedure he had. So I would say and perhaps it's just his personality as well. But he's very focused on something and just won't let it go until there's some sort of resolution. And whereas I'm more like, is that really the goal, or is the goal something else that we should focus on? Because we know this is just a temporary situation. Let's look at the long range thing. Again, could be personality. I don't know. But
back to what Victoria said, some things part of the resilience is knowing what to let go.
Yeah. The prioritizing, right? The prioritizing that this doesn't matter, this does. I also think, and I'm just making a generalization here, but what you're saying is, I've noticed this in a lot of my clients and in myself as well. There is more of a long-term thinking pattern that happens as well. And this is just anecdotally. So I'll find the research on this, but what you're saying is, for women, there is a more long-term thinking that happens. And for men around this age, it's more short-term thinking, and also like, this is the end. Whereas women see
there's a greater sense of urgency for men. What I've noticed, in our travels. Now, one of the areas that I am concerned about, you guys know that I love AI, I love automation, especially in business, especially for, practitioners like us. But same thing that happened with math, right? The minute you begin to use a calculator, a lot of your ability to do mental math decreases. Or when, phone numbers got auto-dialed, we lost our capacity to remember phone numbers, or our need to remember phone numbers. With AI, saying spell check, all those things. But with AI, I am concerned that the ability to just find a quick answer is going to compromise our cognitive abilities to be able to figure things out without looking it up, right? And to the point is, whenever somebody's trying to remember, who sang that song or any fact or anything like that, I will tell them, like, don't look it up.
That's right.
Think about it.
Have you heard the term digital dementia?
Yes.
So what you just described is digital dementia.
Yeah.
And when we hear the word dementia, we often think older adults, but this is something that's happening in teenagers, right? So digital dementia, that's exactly what you just described. We're not giving our brain opportunities to find solutions or to problem solve. Exactly what you said, Sallie. The brain learns from failure. It learns from tension. And we're not giving it any tension. We're not giving it any challenge. And so what is happening now is less brain plasticity, less neurons growing. because we are relying on from GPS to telephone numbers, right? So we are losing memory skills, problem solving skills, solution skills, in all facets of life. And yes, it is very concerning, and it's really important to continue to exercise the brain with mental gymnastics as well as with your physical body. So I can give you a tiny story here in Ontario, here where I am. They took cursive writing out of school systems years ago.
And phonics.
And they're bringing cursive writing back in. They're not bringing cursive writing back in because they think we're going to be doing handwritten letters to ourselves and start using snail mail again. They're bringing it back into the school system because they recognize that that is mental gymnastics for the brain.
Yeah.
In order for something to be considered true brain fitness or neural programming or working your brain, it needs to have at least 3 of the 6 M's. And the 6 M's are movement, music and rhythm, mind, which means problem solving, meaning, which means emotional connection, using your mouth, so talking out loud, and then crossing the midline of your body. And if you think about cursive writing, you cross the midline of your body because you're moving across the page. You're doing it in a rhythmic way. You're moving your body. So there's 3 M's right there. And often when kids are learning, they are mouthing the words with their mouth.
Mhm.
So
And that's why they say write it down, right? Like anything your goals, because I've heard that before, the multifunctions that need to occur when you're writing, from the physicality of writing, the spelling, the creative, like what is it that you're trying to say, the memory, how do I spell these words, like is actually a very powerful tool for
It
sure.
is. And
For
just
sure.
the simple process of writing an affirmation, it doesn't have the same impact on our brains as if you type it.
That's right.
Because and for exactly the reasons Victoria just said, we're putting it into the world through movement and rhythm and all of those things. So
That's, and if you make it journaling, it's even that much more powerful, right?
And color, right? Color. So a coloring book with affirmations is on its way.
And if you use your non-dominant hand, it has even greater impact.
That's right.
Oh, wow. I did not know. Like, okay. So it not just for writing though, for like any skill.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So when we talk about when we talk about what's familiar, think about all of the neural pathways you have in your brain. Think about them as roadways, right? So every time you brush your teeth every morning with your right hand, you're using the same set of neurons that are connected into a pathway. But the more you use it, the more potholes and cracks can get on that roadway, right? Yeah. So if you develop skills to get to the same point, doing it differently, then you're creating a secondary neural pathway to get to the same goal. So when you use your left hand to brush your teeth, you're creating another neural pathway. So again, you're increasing your brain size by growing more neural pathways. But whenever you use your left hand, that gives your brain an opportunity to repair the potholes and the cracks on the pathway for your right hand to brush your teeth. So finding different ways to get to the same point is also incredibly important in making sure you maintain brain volume or prevent your brain volume from shrinking.
Love it. Yeah. And we have gifts for our audience, of course. And I'll let you guys tell us. We'll put the links to download. Super important. Super important. So Sallie, walk us through your ebook giveaway.
Thank you. It's a very short little fun book. It's called Reboot Your Thinking. And it's all about kind of what we've talked about and ways that you can do that with a very simple process called MSG, Mindset, Skill Set, Get Off Your Asset.
Ooh, love it. And we'll put that's part of our 1 Million Woman Challenge. And of course, it's in our PWT Discovery, where you can find these and many other resources and insights and tips that our PWT mentor expert provide. Victoria, what is yours?
Yeah, so you can download my 10-minute reset for the overloaded brain. And this is incredibly important because when the brain's overloaded, it can actually shrink because we're firing too many neurons, if that makes sense, and using up too much energy. So it's a simple PDF form. It's neuroscience backed, and it teaches you a really simple 10-minute process so you can easily calm your nervous system, reduce the overwhelm, regain clarity, and most importantly, train your brain, right? And help your brain to be more plastic. And anybody can find 10 minutes of your day when you wake up in the morning, when you're waiting for the kettle to boil for your tea, you can insert it into any area of your day.
Absolutely. And there are books coming up for our two ladies. They're in the works, so expect them any moment. So thank you, everyone. And remember, success may have brought us here. Understanding how our brain helps us creates what comes next. So thank you very much. And until next time, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Sallie.
Thank you so much.